Okay, Mayor, I turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Good evening and welcome to the Citrus Heights City Council special meeting for Thursday, July 22nd, 2021. And with that, I'll call the meeting to order. Would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Bruins.
Present.
Councilmember Daniels is absent. Councilmember Schaefer.
Here.
Vice Mayor Middleton.
Present.
And Mayor Miller.
Here. Thank you. And that takes us to the next item, which is public comment before we get started with the study session. And if we don't have any speaker cards or raised hands, we can move on.
I do not have any speaker cards and I do not see any raised hands.
Okay. Would you announce the study session then, please?
Study session item is number 2, residential organics collection service options.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. Mary Poole with the General Services Department here, along with Carrie Baxter from R3 Consulting Group. I also would like to recognize that Tony Perez, the General Manager of Republic Services, and Anna Rulon, our Municipal Services Manager, are also attending this study session. And tonight's study session is the next step in completing multiple requirements under SB 1383, the state's unfunded organics recycling mandate. As you may recall, staff has been methodically taking steps to ensure the city is in compliance with CalRecycle regulations and state law. Tonight, we are focused on the residential aspect of mandatory organics recycling. And with that in mind, during the study session, we will touch briefly on the overall jurisdictional requirements and where we are in the process. After that, we will get to the substance of the presentation, covering the need for a negotiated amendment to the current collection services with Republic Services, going over the process, reviewing, providing recommendations for the new program, and ultimately requesting direction from the council on the proposed amendment. This slide is just a reminder of the process we have been going through over the past 2 years. We started back in January of 2020 with a robust review of recycling legislation and of SB 1383 in particular. At that session, we outlined the elements that are needed for compliance with SB 1383. In February that year, we provided an overview to the Citrus Heights Collaborative, and then moved forward with presenting an ordinance to the City Council, which was adopted in September of 2020, which primarily focused on mandatory recycling in the commercial sector. And we have been in the implementation mode for the business community since then. Along those lines, we have been partnering with the haulers and other jurisdictions as well as businesses to provide education and outreach to our business community. We have also utilized our communications team to assist us with social media outreach to complement education efforts, including a presentation in partnership with the Citrus Heights Chamber in February this year, 2021, as well as inviting Citrus Heights businesses to participate in county webinars, which include Citrus Heights contact information. In June, CalRecycle provided a thorough overview of SB 1383 to the City Council, which included the state oversight and enforcement role, requirements of jurisdictions and of generators, along with recognition of how the city is doing on its progress so far on compliance with the mandate. R3 Consulting Group has been assisting staff this entire time. Carrie Baxter is going to take us through the bulk of the study session, which is focused again on the residential sector. We have approximately 20 minutes of the presentation, and then we have time at the end for questions and to get your feedback and direction. And with that, I will turn it over to Carrie.
Thank you, Mary. Good evening, Mayor and council members. To start off, since we've covered this in much detail in previous meetings, I'll provide you just with a brief summary again of SB 1383. This unfunded mandate establishes methane emission reduction targets for the state to reduce short-lived climate pollutants in California's economy. As a reminder, the state's defined organic waste to include yard clippings, leftover food scraps, food soil papers, as well as lumber, textiles, paper, and cardboard. There's 6 major programs within the jurisdictions throughout California will have to implement to avoid enforcement action. The first one is providing weekly collection of organics to all residents and businesses begin no later than January 1st, 2022. As a reminder, the state, like I said, defined organic waste to include yard clippings as well as food scraps in the program. So that's one of the major things that's going to need to change from what's currently being provided in the residential sector. Your edible food recovery program, the city has identified edible food generators and will be required to also enforce contract requirements and tracking of all food diverted from human consumption, with enforcement beginning January 1st, 2022 on the largest of those generators. Then conducting outreach and education of the community is another aspect, basically educating the community about the changes in the collection program and the requirements that there are under the mandate. And then there's procurement of the recovered organic products. So once we recover all this organic waste, we need to do something with it. So they've included a requirement to procure that. It includes purchasing recycled paper products throughout the city and tracking all the purchases and reporting that back to the state, as well as purchasing the recovered organic product like your compost and mulch as well. For the city specifically, because it's based on a population, the annual recovered target is about 7,000 tons per year. Another, I think it's number 5, is secure capacity. So this is where the city needs to assess the existing capacity for both edible food recovery, like your food pantries and food banks, and expand if there's the existing infrastructure is not enough to meet the needs of the edible food generators in the city. And also the city needs to look at and provide proof that there's enough recycling capacity for the materials that are being collected within the organic collection program, even if that material is hauled by contracted haulers. And then lastly, there's a monitoring and compliance component. This requires enforcement penalties. So the city has already adopted an ordinance that does give the authority to enforce participation in these programs that'll begin in 2024, which is required by SB 1383 as well. If the city wasn't to meet all of these requirements, it could face up to $10,000 in fines per day from CalRecycle. Okay. On to the next slide. So based on the city's compliance plan that we submitted to CalRecycle, we've updated the solid waste ordinance, as I mentioned, and the commercial franchise agreements have also been updated. Mary also mentioned that commercial haulers have already begun the rollout. They actually have completed the first part of the rollout of organic and recycling containers to commercial customers that were not in compliance. And now tonight, what we're here to talk about is the residential franchise amendment and the organics collection services for residential. So based on, sorry, the city's had a long-term franchise agreement with Republic Services that expires in 2027. Based on the organic waste definition from the state, the change that's going to have to take place with the major thing that we've looked at really with this negotiation is adding in food waste within that collection of green waste in the green cart, because the other pieces of organics are typically collected in your recycling container, your paper and cardboard. And the current agreement does require that the city and Republic negotiate new programs to comply with the state and the state laws in good faith. So we have been negotiating with Republic for about 6 months now to come up with the best terms possible. So the key components of the negotiations included collection and cart options, processing options, which included, looking at including food and green waste together or just processing food waste separate, outreach and education plan, additional Republic staff to be assisting the city with the required route monitoring and reporting requirements, as well as the implementation schedule to meet SB 1383 timeline. So tonight we'll present the draft proposal that's been negotiated with Republic and are requesting direction to finalize the amendment terms in the amendment. After the amendment's been approved, the city staff will request a hearing and send a Prop 218 notices to residents. After conducting that hearing, the new rates and services would become effective July 1, 2022. So during negotiations, city staff's goals were to maintain high service levels at the most cost-effective rates. Citrus Heights has not raised rates beyond a CPI adjustment since 2010. In fact, customer rates even went down 5% for 2 consecutive years in 2013 and 2014. As you can see on the screen here, rates today are only approximately $1 higher than they were in 2010. And that's an average of about 9 to 12 cents per month annually for the last 11 years. So the key to all of this, as I've said over and over again, is that the current collection services for the green cart will need to be changed from the biweekly collection of just your yard trimmings, green waste, to a weekly collection of yard clippings and food waste. Our negotiations were centered around making this happen in the most cost-effective way. So as shown in this table, most residents are subscribed to a 64-gallon garbage collection service. Currently, collection garbage rates for that 64-gallon service, including 1 recycling, 1 green waste cart, is $22.82. The proposed rate adjustment would increase by $6.85 a month, or $13.38 per billing cycle. Contractually, the city is obligated to approve a rate adjustment that ranges between 1.75% and 3.5% based on CPI every January 1st. So the actual proposed rate is about 27% that would actually take place in July, separate from the 3% that's included in what we're showing tonight. The proposed rates are based on new SB 1383 compliant programs with costs that include 3 additional trucks and drivers, a part-time route auditor and a reporting staff, customer outreach and education, including the delivery of a food kitchen pail for each customer, and additional outreach campaigns through the remaining term of the contract, as well as change in the cost for processing and recycling recycling and organic materials and the administration of the program. The change to the weekly organics collection program costs about $2 million a year more to operate the residential collection program. So most of this cost is due to the change of that processing of organics going from where it's currently being land applied at Silva Ranch to an organic processing facility that's approved to be able to process the mix of organic green waste and food waste together to turn it into compost. There we go. So one of the impacts of the organics program that we wanted to evaluate was the impact of the garbage and recycling trucks on the city streets. Considering that there's going to be 3 new collection trucks that would be introduced into the residential streets. The city had an engineering firm conduct an analysis to determine what the impact of what the impact is overall of refuse vehicles on Citrus Heights roadways to provide additional insight. We looked at vehicle specs, pavement structural sections, the recent pavement management index, refuse vehicle trip estimates and life cycle costs, looking at types of treatments such as microsurfacing, mill, and overlay and full reconstruction of the roadway. Staff is not recommending at this time to include these costs in the rates. However, it is important to understand the impact, especially given the backlog of the pavement maintenance needed throughout the city. So this is something that could be considered in the next procurement process for residential services. So after all is said and done, Citrus Heights is still lower on the lower end of the spectrum in the region as it compares to other refuse collection rates. As I mentioned earlier, the city is contractually obligated to approve a rate adjustment each January. So there would still be that 3% and and the remaining 27% would take place in July. And then please also note, we've got Rancho Cordova and Folsom kind of blurred out. They're still finalizing their numbers in the rate setting process. So they are not completely public yet, but they're in that range. Other agencies throughout the region and the state have been exploring options to reduce their curbside or appointment collection programs. In general, reducing services have been found not to meet agency requirements or objectives or to be cost effective. So during negotiations, we looked at a number of ways to mitigate rate impacts, including reducing services, going to fewer neighborhood cleanup events, eliminating oil or sharps collection. Three of the options that we looked at in more detail included the first option, which was to add a free dump coupon in place of one of the 3 neighborhood cleanups. But we found that this limited the cost savings realized, and the drop-off location we found to be, it could be confusing because they would end up taking their waste to
Elk Creek.
Thank you, to Elder Creek rather than the closer locations. So we found it probably not as convenient as would be wanted within the community. The second option, we looked at just eliminating one of the 3 neighborhood cleanups and just having 2 per year. In the end, again, this was a limited cost savings being realized. There was really no change in the number of trucks and drivers that would be needed. And the majority of people would most likely hang on to that material and just set it out at the next year's first neighborhood cleanup. So the third option that we looked at was to remove the second free organics cart. So residents currently are able to select one additional free recycling or free organics container if they find a need to have that. But with the change from a bi-weekly collection for organics to a weekly collection, we saw that we were already doubling the service that was being provided for organics collection. So by removing that container, we found that we would save residents about 3% on average, which equaled out to about $9 to $13 per year in a reduction of the customer rates. And then for those that did still need an additional organics container, they could get that still at a cost of $14 per month. So,
Could I ask a question?
Sure.
What size is the compost container?
So
Same size as the green waste now?
The green waste container will become the organics cart. So whatever size you would like to have, you can choose, and that is not impacted. Your trash cart drives the size of your service rate, so you could still have a 96-gallon green waste cart if you like.
Okay, I'll follow up with some further questions. Thanks.
Sure, no problem. Okay, so after extensive review of those options that we just discussed, staff is recommending the following program for City Council review. This program includes changing from that bi-weekly green waste collection to a weekly organics, which is your green and food waste collection together in the same green bin. And by changing that bi-weekly collection to weekly collection, you'll in essence double your service for that green cart. And then because of that, staff's recommending removing the second free organics cart. And and charging the additional $14 a month for any additional green organics carts.
The other piece to that is Republic Services provides six bags of leaf pickup on, I think we'll switch it to mixed recycling day, but every other week for during storm season. So they still have that option as well. So there's definitely a benefit that's realized and no loss on the green waste cart.
Thank you, Mary. In addition to changing just the organics portion of the collection, all other services would basically remain the same. We'd still include the 3 free neighborhood cleanup events, the battery, used oil, sharps, Christmas tree collection, the free drop-off at NARS or other county facilities. The only other change that really came up was something that's been asked for from the residents, and that was the one on-call or an on-call bulky waste cleanup. So if the 3 neighborhood cleanup events don't work for a resident, they currently don't have an option to be able to call Republic and have the waste collected at a separate time. So in fact, they'll include a fee for that collection based on the total size of the waste that needs to be collected. And it's just at an option for no additional charge to residents except for those that need the service.
Carrie,
Yes.
just a question on that. You're referring to the curbside pickup, right? The 3.
Yeah. So there's 3 free curbside neighborhood, it's scheduled pickups within the neighborhoods every year.
Okay.
There will be an additional option for a resident to call separate from that to schedule a pickup as well.
Okay.
And
Mary, you know where I'm going with this.
yes, I do. Yes, I do. So I absolutely know where you're going with this, Jeannie. And what happens is we have folks who are moving in, moving out, and they want to have Republic Services, or they're doing a clean out of one of their rentals and they want Republic to come get the material. So we get these calls all the time for people to just fee for service. Can we call and have Republic come and pick up the material? And so we just wanted to put this out there for your consideration, understanding that there's still some caution from the 2006 debacle.
Good word.
But this service is offered throughout the region. So, lots of people are used to being able to call and have their material picked up for a fee. So it's become an inconvenience for these residents not to be able to call and have the material picked up. It also results in illegal dumping because the tenants will set the material out anyway, and will end up having to pick it up under our illegal dumping program.
Well,
so we think it'd be worth your consideration.
Okay, and if this flies, and for those council members who weren't on the council at that time, what we thought was going to be what happened was that if someone put bulky waste out on the curb for pickup, all their neighbors suddenly thought it was they were missing something. So all these unscheduled pickups were all over the city. And I mean, if David Wheaton were still here, he could tell you what it did to his life at that time. It was a nightmare. We had to, and it was right before the 4th of July where fireworks were going to go off and could potentially burn these. And it was a massive effort between Republic and the city staff to get this cleaned up before the 4th. So it was citywide. It was crazy. So if we do approve this, then I would like to make sure that there is a plan in place to mitigate that ever happening again.
Absolutely. We would proceed with caution.
Okay.
Okay, well, and with that, I was going to just pass it back to Mary to kind of summarize and finalize our presentation.
Thank you, Carrie. So in summary, organics collection is required for all generators of organic waste, including residential. We are also required to amend our current agreement with Republic Services in order to provide these services. The negotiated terms that we're proposing provide the lowest cost option that meets state's requirements, city objectives, and maintains the service package that makes it as convenient and affordable as possible for residents to properly recycle and dispose of their waste. And Citrus Heights rates continue to remain at or among the lowest rates in the region. So the next steps, after obtaining your input tonight, the next steps include drafting and fine-tuning the amendment, bringing it back to City Council for your consideration, and asking for you to formally schedule a Prop 218 public hearing to finalize the rates. Once that hearing date is set, we will finalize and mail the Prop 218 notice, which will trigger a 45-day protest period. The public hearing is tentatively set for January of 2022. And once the rates are approved, then staff and Republic Services will launch the education and outreach effort. And then the new rates and programs would begin in July of 2022. And now we have time for questions, comments, and ultimately we're looking for your direction to come back with an amendment for formal consideration based on your input tonight.
Thank you, Mary, and thank you, Carrie, for your presentation. Tim, you got some questions or comments?
You know, as I was going through this, I wrote my questions down, and every single one of them got answered.
Oh, that's always good.
Very good.
Let's see.
Good job, Mary and Terry.
Jeannie, do you have any questions or comments?
Yeah, a couple. One is, so the city is going to be obligated to prove that, would you say 7,000 tons? What did you say, Mary, what the number was?
7,000 tons of recovery.
Yeah. So, and this is okay. So for those of us who are composters, then we're being asked not to compost, but to put it in the green waste bin to create communal composting.
No, we will still want everyone who can compost to compost. We'll still be continuing to encourage and provide education about composting. But material that was going in, this is the intent of this is to divert material that was going into the landfill and now turning that into compost. It's not intended to take material that was being composted and recomposted or process it again.
Okay,
Our goal is to, yeah.
Okay, no, I get that part. So then the other question I have is, you know, most people who don't compost, if they have a garbage disposal, they use it for food scraps, you know, and so is it fair to carry this out to say you'd rather have that food put in the compost bin than go down the garbage disposal? Not you, but you know, the SB 1383.
I think that the state would prefer that material was composted versus going through the garbage disposal, but we recognize that there's going to be material that is disposed of through the garbage disposal. However, you know, really we're concentrating on what was being disposed of in the landfill.
Okay, so then that brings up another question, because this is something that I do. Sitting on the sewer board, I'm very sensitive to this. You know, fast soils and grease. I set that aside in a container and it goes in my trash bin and not down the drain because it'll clog up the sewer. So are fat soils and grease going to be acceptable in the compost bin then? Since that would normally go into the landfill.
I'll let Carrie answer that one.
Normally, it shouldn't go in the trash or the organics container. Though I could be wrong within Citrus Heights. I know I'm in Placer County and I should know Citrus Heights laws as well. But I personally have to take my grease and take it to Western Placer for processing. So Anna, I don't know the,
Chris Heights, it goes in the trash at this point. Other agencies do have a fog collection program. We do not,
Yeah,
which is fats, oils, and grease.
all I would add to that, just piggybacking off of what Carrie said, it won't be our intention to collect large quantities of fats, oils, and greases in the organics container, but it will be unrealistic that no amounts of fogs will be going in the organics container. And Jeannie, I have to add, you're probably one of the more responsible people when it comes to getting rid of your waste. Most people I know do not compost or collect their fogs separately.
Yeah, I know. We get those reports. It's called backup into structure. Get those reports every quarter at the regional sand meeting. So,
And we can absolutely look at some type of a fog collection program in the next procurement. This contract is up in 2027, so it's right around the corner.
thank you, Mary.
I have another quick question is, have we looked at the impact on the garbage, the additional garbage trucks will have on our roads? We looked at lots of other impacts. Did we look at what if people just decide, look, I'm going to shove as much down the garbage disposal as possible? What would be the impact to SASD? Has that been a
It
part of the
probably
Oh.
back up into the house is what the issue is.
Yeah.
Pay
yeah,
for it.
Yeah.
they would pay for it individually.
Yeah, SASD has a very robust program of keeping pipes clean, but there are situations, many, I'd say 90% less than it was when I first started on the board of, backups for one reason or another. So,
And this will be a great opportunity to leverage that outreach and also and engage our communications team to help, get more of that information out to every way that we can.
right.
Portia, any questions or comments?
You guys gave a great presentation, very complicated, but you did answer a lot of questions. It's just the educational component to that's going to be a challenge. I can foresee that, and I don't think anyone's going to be excited about hearing that their rates are going up. So it's what it is.
Okay, thank you. And I wanted to follow up on a question Jeannie asked about tonnage. Percentage-wise, how much is this bill expecting to divert from the landfill?
So they are basing it on the numbers that were identified during a waste characterization study in 2014. They'd like to see 50% was supposed to be seen by 2020. And they want to see 75% of organic waste being diverted from the landfill by 2025. We didn't meet that 2020 goal, and because of that, they had made some changes. I'm pretty sure I came and talked to you guys about it back in September. They changed the requirements on the commercial side from a threshold of those that generated 4 cubic yards down to 2 cubic yards to really focus on the larger generating waste generators within each city. So overall, the goal is to recover 75% of the organic waste.
Well, I was doing my math as a consumer. So if I can reduce my 64 gallons of refuse to 32, was I correct in hearing that the compost would be a 32 then? It's based on your garbage size?
Your garbage size is what drives your monthly rate. So you can
Right.
have a 32 gallon garbage, pay your 32 gallon rate and have a 96 gallon mixed recycling and a 96 gallon green waste or / organics. Plus you can have an additional free 96 gallon mixed recycling. So theoretically you could be a savvy recycler and a good composter and have that 32 gallon trash.
Yeah, I think once folks figure that out, we could see a trend away from the larger carts, which could be a good thing as long as that pencils out for Republic. All right, well, I don't have any further questions. Thank you so much. And I guess the next time we'll see you is back in October.
Correct. We'll be back with the proposed amended agreement.
All right, well, any other questions or comments before I recess the special meeting? Hearing none, we'll see you all